Who's that? Who's Mel Young?
Robert Anton Wilson.
Uncle Mel.
Now listen to this.
What?
Scandals to longevity to sex in the future. Mel, tell me more about that.
Somebody has to talk about these things. It can't all be the box scores.
That's right.
Wait a minute, Mel.
Life is complicated. This gentleman is someone that I interviewed years ago. He has not heard this story. He's out in the green room listening right now. For those who are conspiracy buffs, I don't know if you guys are into conspiracies, and this state is being rocked by a lot of words to that end, but the Illuminati, does that mean anything to you?
Yeah, I've had a couple of those. I had one this morning when I got up.
A cup of coffee and a piece of pie there once.
If you look at your currency, our paper money, you will find a pyramid. At the top of that is an eye. Why is that there? We'll find out from a man who can talk about many things, as you mentioned. That's coming up next hour. We'll have open phones about the trial. That'll be between 9 and midnight, all coming up on KTAR.
Do me a favor tonight, Mel, if you would.
Yeah.
Ask him about the conspiracy of why the Boston Red Sox didn't win the '86 World Series, if you would. There had to be a conspiracy
Keep your eye on the pyramid.
Keep your eye on the pyramid alone, where it should be a good show, Mel. We'll be listening to it.
But I've got to tell you, in all honesty, that I have very much looked forward to this interview because Dr. Robert Anton Wilson is someone that I interviewed a long time ago, and I know you've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews. When I first got into talk radio, I must have been just about 40 days into the format in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This goes back in the latter 70s. So you don't worry about not remembering this humble talk show host out of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That must have been a telephone.
It was a phoner, as we call it. Exactly. So you've never been to Tulsa?
Never been to Tulsa.
Never been close to Oral Roberts, or?
I've been in Dallas and Houston and Austin and Phoenix. I've been all around that area, but I never got to Tulsa yet.
It's a beautiful and a wonderful town. I don't mean to deride it at all, but there I was, and my program director says, "Look at this book," and he had picked up a softcover version of, and I can't remember the full title, but it was with the Illuminati. It was you know, on this whole subject of something I had never even heard about. And he says, look at your currency, you know, the eye on the pyramid and all of that. He says, you ought to have this gentleman on. So I remember we called and finally got you on. And at the end of that hour, I barely understood what you were talking about, but I still wanted to listen, and I wanted to learn even more. And then when I'm going through this material, suddenly your name pops out, and I said, that's the guy who could talk about the Illuminati. Anyway, it's been a long time since I've interviewed you, and now I can meet you in person. Thanks for joining us on KTAR. You were in the Valley to do what? And you've already had your lecture already, and you're just about ready to go back to Los Angeles, I think.
I came here to do a lecture on Friday evening and a seminar, an all-day seminar on Saturday. The seminar was called Everything You Know Is Wrong, and it was an attempt to teach people how easily their brains deceive them.
Everything You Know Is Wrong.
I stole that from the Firesign Theater.
All right.
You can't copyright a title, I'm told.
I was, as we say in the business, teasing this hour by saying that for people who love conspiracies, and that word is being used a lot these days in our political atmosphere in particular, that you're one that can address yourself, though to many topics, to talk about something that I just mentioned, the Illuminati. Was there any, do you remember the book that I'm talking about?
You're either talking about the Illuminatus Trilogy, which was in 3 volumes, which was a novel, or about Cosmic Trigger, the Final Secret of the Illuminati, which was a non-fiction book.
That's the one.
That's a Cosmic Trigger. They're all still in print.
All right.
The Illuminatus Trilogy is now in 1 volume from Dell, and Cosmic Trigger is in print from Falcon Press in Los Angeles. I'm glad you asked.
Well, I have to ask you now to at least make some sort of statement, because I want to get you into these other things, because you're a lecturer, you've written some 20-plus books, 25 books. You're a philosopher. You've been called the Lenny Bruce of philosophers. You have a sense of humor about yourself. And it would be hard for me to try to figure at times, are you telling me the truth or are you pulling my leg? But on the Illuminati, what can you tell me about that? Please, on our dollar bill, there's that eye on the top of the pyramid. What's going on?
Well, the Illuminati was a secret society formed in 1776 in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, by a former Jesuit named Adam Weishaupt. It was a secret society within a secret society. It was a secret society made up only of people who are already members of a Freemasonic lodge in Bavaria. It spread beyond Bavaria to France, Austria, the rest of Germany, all over Europe. There are some who think it even spread to the United States. It was officially abolished by the Bavarian government in 1787, and ever since then, a variety of imaginative, unacademic historians have been arguing that it's still in existence and it's taken over most of the world. It's the secret power behind communism, and it also runs the banks at the same time, and it runs the television stations. ABC is the ancient Bavarian conspiracy, and CBS is the conservative Bavarian Sears. I think NBC is the new Bavarian conspiracy, and they're responsible for the fact you can't get a plumber on weekends anymore, and almost everything else that's wrong with the world.
But from that part of the world, you mentioned Bavaria. Isn't there another secret society that starts with a B? The
Bilderbergers.
Bilderbergers, is that also a part of this?
The Bilderbergers is a secret society of financiers and politicians convened by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, starting about 15 years ago, and they meet every year in secret. Nobody knows what they talk about. So naturally, all the rest of the human race, like you and me, who are excluded, sit and ponder and wonder, what are they up to? A lot of people assume they are up to nothing but the most devilish and Machiavellian evil.
Yeah.
The Bilderbergers is convened by Prince Bernhard. One of the major financiers behind it is David Rockefeller.
Oh, boy, at home they're going, they're grabbing their radios right now, right?
It arouses a lot of suspicion from the extreme right and the extreme left.
Yeah.
Prince Bernhard, of course, is descended from the Merovingians, and therefore, according to the thesis of the most ingenious conspiracy book to come out since my Illuminatus novels, which is Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Bagent, Lincoln, and Lee, according to that book, Prince Bernhard is descended from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And so that gives an entirely new dimension to the whole conspiratorial picture. However, there's another book that's not available in this country yet, which I read when I was living in Europe for 6 years, published in France, called La Race Fabuleuse by Gerard de Sede. According to that book, the Merovingians were descended from extraterrestrials from the system of the double star Sirius. Otto von Habsburg, who's the president of the Society for the United States of Europe, one of the chief movers behind the European Parliament and the EEC and all the new trade agreements.
Whatever you say.
Well, yeah, Prince Dr. von Habsburg is very, very, very active in the movement to unify Europe. He's also a Bilderberger. He has the title of King of Jerusalem, and he's descended from the Merovingians, too, which means he's either descended from Jesus or from extraterrestrials, depending on which of those wild conspiracy books you choose to believe.
I've got to ask this concerning George Bush and Jimmy Carter and others of the Trilateral Commission. I mean, I've got to ask you about that.
Well, Jimmy Carter was a member of the Trilateral Commission, which is financed by the Rockefellers and is very closely linked to the Bilderbergers. So I don't know if Jimmy Carter is descended from extraterrestrials.
But I want to throw that out.
A UFO once, and he was attacked by a killer rabbit, which has never been explained.
Built a treehouse for Amy too. So,
do you remember when he was attacked by the killer rabbit?
Oh yeah.
They wouldn't release photos of it.
No, and he apparently took the oar or the paddle and beat it off.
He had to fight the rabbit off with a paddle. It was a genuine killer rabbit.
Remember, isn't there a secret organization? Or an exclusive organization, and it's, I think, somewhere in the woods near San Francisco. I mean, Henry Kissinger belongs to it, and they sit around naked sometimes.
The Bohemian Club.
Yeah, you got it.
Yes.
Now, see, that's
the American branch of the Grand Loge Alpina. The Grand Loge Alpina is all the richest people in Switzerland. They all belong to this Masonic lodge. Called the Grand Loge Alpina.
Yeah.
They also circulate the propaganda of the Priory of Sion, which is the group that includes Prince Bernhard and Otto von Habsburg and all these other peoples who are either descended from Jesus or from extraterrestrials or have a lively sense of humor about the mythology they spread about themselves.
Have you mentioned the Rothschilds yet?
The Rothschilds, many people believe, financed the Illuminati, but I've never found any hard evidence to support that.
One
unfortunately.
more that I've heard before. And did Benjamin Franklin belong to the Rosicrucians? Have I pronounced it correctly?
Yes, he was also a Freemason. He was in the Scotch Rite. He was also initiated into the Grand Orient, the larger Freemasonry in France, which is the most revolutionary of all Masonic groups. He was also a member of the Hellfire Club in England.
See, I read that book a long time ago. I don't know if Benjamin Franklin was mentioned in yours, was he?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and before our break here, the eye on the top of the pyramid.
That's an ancient Masonic symbol, but it's pre-Masonic. It goes back to Egypt. It's the Eye of Horus. It represents the dawning of the new aeon, the new age.
What's it doing on our currency?
Well, that's because the founding fathers thought they were creating a new aeon.
And they did.
They did, indeed.
Our guest is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson. I'll be referring to him as Bob. He's out of Los Angeles. He has traveled and lived around the world. He's a futurist, an author, a humorist, a philosopher, and he has made his first Phoenix appearance with lectures all this weekend. And we have welcomed him to the Mel Young Show. We'd like to hear from you at 277 KTAR, 277-5827. We will not spend the whole hour on conspiracies because when I was teased by a press release and information, they were saying he can talk about the new Inquisition, how scientific fundamentalists are trying to suppress research and destroy the credibility of other scientists who attempt to study parapsychology and psychic energy, if I can again, human immortality, discuss the latest prospects in human longevity research, fascinating, sex in the future, that got the guys from sports interested, and they say, Dr. Wilson, a former Playboy editor, really?
Yes.
Okay. Hughes in trouble again. This woman's suing him for all this money.
She was suing him for $5 million, and she got a better lawyer, and now she's suing him for $35 million. Yeah.
Conspiracy and secret societies was at the end of this list. We've kind of touched that, but hopefully we'll get some calls on from people who would just like to talk to a mind like yours. You're a very learned gentleman. 277 KTAR, 277-5827. Oh, the calls are pouring in, and I hope they do when we have open phones starting at 9 o'clock this evening here on KTAR. Our special guest is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson. Bob, let's talk to Jay on KTAR. Go ahead. I should push this button. Jay, you're on KTAR. Thanks for calling.
How you doing, Doctor?
Hello.
You know, I was wondering if you're aware that the great classical composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was also a Freemason.
Oh, yes. He was a member of the Lodge of Good Hope in Vienna.
And also, Doctor, do you believe that the pyramid itself has any power? Because I have friends that really believe this. In fact, they sleep with a pyramid above their head.
It has considerable power to make money for people who build cheap pyramids. I don't know of any other power that I've been able to check out.
How about dull razor blades to sharp?
How about overall? Where would socialism and Marx and Lenin, where would they fit into this pattern?
They do not help sharpen your razor blades at all.
Okay, well, what about their place in the world?
Marxism is the more reactionary form of socialism. In the Scandinavian countries, they think it's absolutely hilarious that the Russians think you can't have socialism without putting poets and painters in prison.
Look what happened to Shostakovich, the great
and musicians too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he had to leave in
the Russians have the most barbaric form of socialism on the planet, but it's not the only form of socialism.
Barry, you're on KTAR.
Thanks very much, Mel. I have a quick question for Bob. I attended his lecture on Friday night, enjoyed it very much, and in that lecture he mentioned the front of the world being something called the Pacific Rim culture. I'm hoping you might be able to tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, the Pacific Rim culture, that name was created by a friend of mine, the anthropologist William Irwin Thompson. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of differences in the Pacific Rim culture that differentiate it from any other part of the planet. This includes California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Alaska, Japan, Hawaii, and parts of Australia. This is a new culture which is much more optimistic than most of the world, much more technologically oriented, computer crazy, and very much into space migration and longevity research. And it's obviously the culture that's going to be creating the 21st century. That's why I came back from Ireland. I decided I couldn't observe that culture from a distance any longer. I had to get back involved in it again.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What has Ireland done for writers? Because I understand they were making special tax dispensation for folks like you, right?
Yes, in Ireland, you don't have to pay income tax if you're a writer of proven merit. And there's a National Arts Council that decides whether you have proven merit or not. They decided I did. I'll always be grateful to them for that.
Which one were you questioned about most carefully? What was the one they were most curious about?
No, they didn't question me at all. I just submitted 5 books, and they made their decision. I don't know what they said to one another. I don't know how they decided. Maybe they threw the books up to the ceiling, and the ones that didn't stick there were the ones that were votes for me. I don't know.
Which of your books has gotten you most notoriety, and which the most criticism?
Illuminatus has sold more than any of the others, but it's been out longer than any of the others. That's sold nearly 1 million copies worldwide by now. Cosmic Trigger is coming up behind that, selling almost as much. The one that got the most bitterly attacked was a science fiction trilogy called Schrodinger's Cat, which apparently nobody could understand except a few physicists. New Scientist magazine said it was written by a panel of physicists under a pen name. They didn't believe I really existed.
How smart
They were the only ones who appreciated it. But now it's coming back into print, and slowly it has attracted fans over the years while it's been out of print.
But we're not going to see it as a made-for-TV movie, probably.
Not in the immediate future.
How smart are you?
Not very.
Okay, I'll buy that. Chris, you're in KTAR with Bob Wilson.
Yeah, how you doing, Mel?
All right.
I got 2 questions for your guest. Number 1, sir, what can you tell me about the so-called Zionist conspiracy that's supposed to have taken place at the Elders of Zion in Basel, Switzerland? And number 2, the Jekyll Island conspiracy.
Do you know what he's talking about?
The Elders of Zion, that's an alleged conspiracy based on a document called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was forged by a bureaucrat in Tsarist Russia in 1905, widely spread around the world by the Nazis in the 30s, and printed in this country by Henry Ford. By mass manufacturing cars, he managed to pollute the whole air of the country, and by circulating that forgery, he tried to pollute the mind of the country, too. But he meant well, or at least he meant something. I don't know anything about the Jekyll Island conspiracy. That's a new one on me.
Connected with the Carter Glass Money Reform Act?
I'm sorry, I can't do anything with Jekyll Island.
Okay.
Sounds fascinating.
Yes.
Sounds like a real
anything
good
to do with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. Eric, you're on KTAR.
Hello, Dr. Wilson. I wanted to tell you that I adored Schrodinger's Cat. And also I wanted to ask you if you would ordain your audience as popes to the Discordian Society.
I'll ask Mel if I'm allowed to do that. Can I ordain popes over your show?
Ordain popes?
Yes, I've been doing that over radio shows all over Europe.
Is that with a capital P or a little p?
A capital P.
Are we talking about the Catholic Church?
No, we're talking about Discordian popes. The Catholics only have one pope. The Discordian Society has
Discordian.
Around 3 million
Give me a
popes
definition
now.
of Discordian.
The Discordian Society is a new... some people think it's a complicated joke disguised as a new religion. Actually, it's a new religion disguised as a complicated joke. And I'm a Discordian pope, and it's the duty of all Discordian popes to canonize as many other popes as they can at every opportunity.
Does the Internal Revenue Service know about this, and have people written this off on their taxes because they've contributed? You know why I asked that?
No,
because a lot of people have created these pseudo-religions or whatever, as a tax shelter.
No, the Discordian Society doesn't recognize Internal Revenue, so Internal Revenue doesn't recognize it either.
That's safe. Yeah, go ahead. How do you pope this guy?
Okay, everybody listening to this show right now, you're appointed a Discordian Pope. That means you're absolutely infallible, and in order to live up to this rank, the first thing to do is to excommunicate me, since I'm the one who appointed you. Now you're totally independent of me and decide for yourself what a Discordian Pope does. But remember, you are the leader of your own religion, so you don't have to pay money to anybody else to get close to God.
I'll get cards and letters, and I'll send them on to our guest, Dr. Robert Anton Wilson. Thank you, Chris, or Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, 277 KTAR 277-5827. Let me shift you into these other things that were mentioned, and if you want to bring up something else that's more interesting than this, human immortality. What do you think?
I think longevity is very definitely getting closer all the time. People are living longer. Just before I left Ireland, I heard in 1977 They did a study, how many people over 100 in England? There were 300. In 1987, they repeated it, and there were 3,000. I'm sure you could find comparable figures in this country. People are living longer than ever. Some of the vitamins and other supplements people are taking are working. Maybe it's ginseng. I don't know what it is. But there's more research being done all the time, and we're all going to live a lot longer than the insurance companies think we will.
Poor Willard Scott from NBC in the Today program. Remember, he started out by wishing a happy birthday to anybody who celebrated 100 years plus. And now he says he's just inundated by all of these cards and photographs. And
George Burns is still appearing in Las Vegas once a year.
He's going to be booked
on 92.
You see, he's booked at 100 already. Did you know that?
At the Palladium in London?
Wherever, or no, in Las Vegas, there's, I think, one of the houses there has booked him for his 100th birthday. That's optimism. No, he's incredible. Now, do you feel, though, because I know, in fact, I saw a picture of this the other day in a flyer saying, please buy this book because you'll find all kinds, it was like strange and interesting facts or something. And there was a picture of chironic, am I using the right?
Cryonic.
Came close. Cryonic chamber where the guy was wrapped, whatever it was there, wrapped in aluminum foil or whatever it was, frozen so that at some point scientists could say, wake up. I mean, what do you think?
I think it'll pay off. I think the people who have been cryonically frozen will be revived if we don't blow the planet up in the meanwhile. It's everything has a risk in it.
You're going to do it?
Yes.
Your brain or your whole torso included? What do you think?
Oh, I think I'll save the whole merchandise.
Okay, and his name is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson, and you may give us a call at 277-KTAR, 277-5827, as we continue discussing things that he does and his writing and his lecturing, and he has a background as an editor for Playboy magazine. You're a doctor of psychology, and you've made a living the last several years by just writing. I mean, did you ever have a client who said, I need a psychologist, help me?
Yes, I used to, but now I'm a full-time writer. I've been writing full-time for 15 years now, and I enjoy it tremendously. I travel around doing lectures and seminars. I get to see the world. Other people pay my travel expenses to bring me in to lecture, and it's a great life compared to a regular clientele or a regular office job or anything like that.
Has the phone call ever come to you from anyone from the government saying, we know you've made some studies on things, we'd like to talk to you? Has that ever happened to you?
No, I think they have a file on me, says dangerous, subversive, unreliable, or something like that.
Now, you're grinning when you say that, but is it true?
Oh, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I've flown the Atlantic so many times, and the fact they've never asked me to do a small job for them means that they regard me as unreliable. That suits me fine. I regard them as unreliable.
But I always wanted people who were just good thinkers to be tapped into by the government somehow. I guess they have the think tank system, and I've never been to a think tank. I've always wondered what that looks like. I'm being facetious when I say that, but you hear that expression, and you know, it's like we have Bill Keane, who does Family Circus, and every once in a while he'll do when children hear words like it's a scream door. You stand there and scream until somebody lets you in. In other words, they take things around, and one of them would be a think tank. Just think of it. I'll just leave you speechless there for a moment. We've got to take a break at 277-KTAR. Give us a call, 277-5827. Our guest is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson, and Bob is from Los Angeles, that area, and he's a writer, he's a lecturer, he travels all over the world. And I meant to ask you during a break if there is an address or anything that you can leave our listeners for further contact. I always do that with guests. You can think about it because we have about another 20 minutes here. Just you and me. No calls right now, but we'll welcome your input.
Anybody who wants to get me for lectures or anything like that, or learn about my newsletter or anything, they can call Los Angeles 213-390-2388.
2388. Okay, I'll have that in my file too. 213-390-2388.
That's right.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask you this, Bob, because I know you're in your lecture series, you were talking about what's called the New Inquisition. It says how scientific fundamentalists are trying to suppress research and destroy the credibility of other scientists who attempt to study parapsychology and psychic energy. Long sentence. I want you to get into that, but I have to ask you about something that seems to emanate out of the coasts, east and west, and that's this channeling business. Ramtha.
Oh, yes.
And on and on. And there's a whole bunch right now, and some of these guys are raking off some real money.
I find that fascinating. Ramtha has been dead 30,000 years, and he's as much of a bore as he was when he was alive. I find that incredible. How can you spend 30,000 years and never have an original thought and be just as boring as you were 30,000 years ago? That's a fascinating phenomenon.
All right, let's talk about fascinating phenomenon. I mean, is there any scientific proof to that? You're a psychologist. I don't care what direction you come from. Can you tell me right now, from what you know, as a smart man, is there anything at all to this?
Yeah, people do have the capacity to develop other personalities, other egos, other identities within themselves, and some of them are quite strikingly different than their conscious ego. Most of the channelers seem to create an alternative personality, which sounds like it's read too many editorials in the Reader's Digest. But there are people who have occasionally channeled something really exciting and original. Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer, he started channeling back in the early 70s, and he's channeled some of the weirdest, most hilarious, spookiest, wildest, most creative prose that's been produced in this century.
Have people had past lives?
A lot of people think they have. I've been hypnotically regressed twice to past lives, and one I taught history at Harvard. I figured out after that was over, all the details of that came from the autobiography of Henry Adams, who taught history at Harvard. The other time I was regressed, my name was Hans Zeusser, and I lived in Bavaria. Born in 1740 and died in 1812, and I haven't tracked that one down yet. Maybe that really is a past life. I just don't know for sure.
Yeah. All right, what about scientific fundamentalists and this apparently knock on scientists attempting to study parapsychology and psychic energy? What's going on?
Well, let's start with the case of Wilhelm Reich. Back in the 1950s, Reich claimed to have been able to measure a specific life energy. I've got no reason to believe or disbelieve in a life energy. I'm open-minded about it, but the scientific community has made up its mind there is no such thing as a life energy. And for daring to publish experiments that contradicted scientific dogma, Reich was denounced so widely that the government prosecuted him as a quack. They burned all of his books. It's the only case I can find in American history where the government burned books. We've had vigilante groups here and there do that, but the United States government, violating the Constitution, seized Dr. Reich's books, burned all of them. Then they went up to his laboratory, smashed his scientific equipment with axes, and then they threw him in jail. And that is the kind of thing that happens in the scientific community if you descend too far from established dogma. Just a couple of years ago, Rupert Sheldrake, the English biologist, came up with a book offering a transcendental, or at least not strictly materialist, theory of evolution, and Nature magazine had an editorial calling it a book fit for burning. So the spirit of the people who burned Reich's books isn't dead yet in the scientific community.
What about the scientists who feel that vegetation can have some sort of impact? Well, there was something in down here. Where did I read that? In some of your material where vegetation has something beyond what we just look at it as. Where am I going with
Cleve
that?
Baxter in the 60s developed techniques with a polygraph where he claimed he could register the emotions of plants, and some people duplicated that and some people didn't duplicate it, and it's still very controversial. I tend to believe that plants have consciousness because they're obviously alive. They grow, they go through a life cycle similar to animals. And I think you probably can measure it with the right instruments. They probably do have emotional reactions just like animals do.
You were talking a little while ago about life force. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's strictly verboten in the scientific world.
Well, let's talk about it from the theological world. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, maybe there's something there, and maybe that's the spirit, and maybe there is life after death, and maybe there is a heaven or something beyond just this earthly existence. Is there, as far as you're concerned?
Maybe there is.
Do you think someday that will be measured because there are these studies on the near-death experiences and the parallels?
Near-death experience certainly gives us a lot of reason to think that these people really, people who come back and report being out of their body, in many cases they can report things they couldn't have seen if they weren't out of their body. So I think that type of investigation does strongly support the idea that consciousness is not limited to the body. But then again, I'm not sure consciousness ever is in the body. I think our brains may be like receivers, and thinking that consciousness is in the brain may be like thinking Johnny Carson is in the television set. Actually, Johnny Carson is in Los Angeles, and the television set is just receiving images of Johnny Carson. Our brains may just be receiving consciousness, which may be a non-local field that permeates the whole universe.
I've read where, with colors, what I think is red to you is not red, but that's what I call it because that's what I've been told.
That's right.
That the brilliance or lack thereof is something that's very individual, that it's not the same.
That's my whole seminar this weekend was about that. No two people see the same universe. We're all living in our own private universe. Yeah. It's a miracle that we can communicate at all.
Let's go to Ann on KTAR. Our guest is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson.
Hi, Bob.
Hi,
I've
Ann.
just started reading Cosmic Trigger, and I'd like you to explain the significance of the number 23.
Explain the number 23. The number 23 is very interesting in that it's been connected with a lot of synchronicities. Synchronicities are coincidences that have meaning to the people they happen to. According to Jungian psychology, it's when a lot of synchronicities happen, it means you're going through a period of psychological change and psychic development. According to fundamentalist materialist science, they're just coincidences and they don't have any meaning. I tend to agree with Jung that they do have meaning. I found when I was going through a period of tremendous transformation and growth, and rocky, bumpy passages as well as happy ones, the number 23 was connected with a lot of coincidences, and I put that in that book. The strange thing is, ever since the book came out, I keep running into people who've encountered dramatic 23s at crucial points in their lives, too. And I don't know what to make of it anymore. When I was in St. Louis last year, somebody told me, I figured out how your 23 gimmick works. You make the readers abnormally aware of 23s, and they notice that more than they notice other numbers.
Give you that feedback then.
And I said, congratulations, you've discovered the master who makes the grass green. You're a Zen Buddhist. And then we went out to have pizza together, and we got a ticket, and our number was 23. And he said, how do you do it?
Fascinating. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jay, you're on KTAR.
Hello, Mr. Wilson.
Hello there.
Yes, I'm here. I have a question for Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
I'd like to know, is there any significance to the fact that there are 23 teams in the NBA? And what insight can this yield for me in playing the Beethoven Appassionata?
Oh, the Appassionata is Sonata 23. That's very clever. The Mad Bomber in Airport was in seat 23, and there are 23 chromosomes contributed by the father and 23 by the mother in the act of conception. And Euclid's geometry begins with 23 definitions, and I can go on like this all night if you want me to.
Jay, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Fort Worth, Texas.
Are you getting our signal down there?
I was listening in on the Sirius line, and...
Oh, I'll be in Fort Worth next week.
Terrific.
I'm giving a lecture in Dallas. I won't be in Fort Worth. I'll be near Fort Worth, I should say.
Is it at the Scottish Rite Children's Hospital?
I'm not sure I'm appearing there this time. I think I'm appearing at a larger place this time.
Maybe a call to that number we gave earlier, 213-390-2388. We'll have your schedule.
That's right, yes.
How about that? Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
We got to take a break, and we'll return. We'll still take your calls if you'd like to talk to this most interesting gentleman, Dr. Robert Anton Wilson, here on KTAR.
Presenting the Gershwin Collection. 53 spectacular performances together for the first time.
I got rhythm. I got music.
Fascinating river. Ethel Merman, Benny Goodman, Lena Horne, Tony Bennett, Judy Garland, Fred Astaire, and many more.
That bass, slap it till it's dizzy. Slap that bass, keep the rhythm busy.
You say either and I say either.
3.5 hours of George Gershwin's music, plus a 20-page book on his life, only from Teledisc and not in any store.
It's wonderful.
The Gershwin Collection, a collector's set of 53 priceless recordings. 5 records or 3 cassettes, just $29.95 plus shipping. 3 CDs, just $39.95 plus shipping.
Oh, I got plenty of nothing, and nothing's plenty for me.
To order, call 1-800-543-2200. That's 1-800-543-2200. Credit cards accepted, satisfaction guaranteed.
I've got a beautiful luxury car waiting for you for just $45 a day.
I'm Avis, and my goal is pleasing you. I'm Avis, taking pride in what I do.
I'm always trying harder to do something special for you, and now I've got a beautiful luxury car for just $45 a day. I'm Avis.
Availability and rates may vary in some cities. Call Avis for details.
I'm Avis, trying harder than the rest because I'm Avis.
Who do you think would win a recall election for governor? What will the winning strategy have to be? What is it going to take? And how does the crowded field affect the outcome? I'm Preston Westmoreland, and I know you have thoughts on that, and Monday we'll talk with political strategist Rick DeGraw about the upcoming recall election. Join us Monday at 12:30 on KTAR 620, News Talk Radio.
This is Mel Young on KTAR. Dr. Robert Anton Wilson is with us, and it says, if you've just tuned in, from this release I was given, it says, author, futurist, humorist, and philosopher. And for many years he lived in Ireland. Now he is residing in Los Angeles, and he came to visit the Valley to deliver a lecture or two, and we have him with us on KTAR as he writes about a number of things. And you've been hearing from some of the calls about synchronicity. That's a great word, and there was a book, I don't know if it was yours, it was someone else that perhaps wrote a book that used to be in my possession, and I've lost it, about all of the wonderful synchronicities that have been chronicled down through history. And it's so much fun. It's fast reading because it'll take 1 or 2 pages to explain how some guy
I'm not familiar
was on
with
a
that.
stagecoach, and there was somebody, he told the story about when he was a child of 12 and he lost something out of the plow cart when, out in the field, and it had been in the family for years, and this companion or this person on the stagecoach that he'd never met before says, gee, it sounds like this, reached into his pocket, and there it was. Those kinds of stories, it's a great little paperback. If anybody listening knows anything about it, it involves the word synchronicity. Let me know.
I'd love to see a historical collection.
Who knows whether it's true? It just reads well. Let's talk to John on KTAR with Robert Wilson.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'd like to ask your guest if he's familiar with the works of a gentleman, Mr. E. Raymond Camp, the biblical archaeologist from Thousand Oaks, California, and if he has an opinion about the American Israelite movement.
No, I haven't heard of him. I'm sorry.
The American Israelite movement.
Yeah, it's kind of hooked up with the Worldwide Church of God and Christian identity. This gentleman gives some archaeological basis. He's written several books, actually. One of them is Missing Links, discovered in the Syrian tablets. Essentially, there are some people in the United States that believe that America is a regathering of Israel. And I just thought perhaps you guys might have been familiar with this particular gentleman.
No, I'm not familiar with him. Send me material, as we say.
Will do.
Always looking for guests here on our talk shows in KTAR. We have just a few minutes. He mentioned something. He mentioned archaeology, but I guess people recall, I guess back in the 70s when this fellow wrote the book Chariot of the Gods and got everybody stirred up about some of these things down in South America, Central America in particular, but around the world. It only could have been done by superior beings from outer space. And okay, just let's start talking about those sorts of things. What do you think?
Well, most of the artifacts he talks about could be built easily by human beings using levers and levers and planks.
And hundreds of thousands of slaves, but they could whip them up.
Well, you don't need that many slaves. There's a very interesting book called How to Build a Flying Saucer, which that's only one of the chapters in it. The first chapter tells you how to build Stonehenge or the pyramids with simple Stone Age technology.
That sounds like a wonderful book.
It is a
what's
wonderful
the title?
book. How to Build a Flying Saucer by Paul Lucky.
But he goes through and he actually talks about Stonehenge and other things and how that could have been.
How to build it with levers and planks.
Is it called Easter Island with those huge stone heads? What about...
He also tells you how to build a flying saucer if you want to.
I read a marvelous piece of fiction one time theorizing that there are flying saucers, but they were built by an intelligent German scientist who couldn't get the Reich to listen to him, and he eventually was captured by our country and was operating a secret base, and that these were the sightings that you see every once in a while are where they slip through their shield of invisibility, and that we have the technology, you know, this whole thing. What about?
I've heard that too.
Now, what's going on with extraterrestrials, flying saucers, UFOs? What do you think?
I'm inclined to think that there are geomagnetic fluctuations on the planet which cause people to hallucinate and bring up archetypes from the collective unconscious. I think that's why people at a distance only see weird lights, because the geomagnetic fluctuation is creating ball lightning. People a little closer in say their refrigerator light goes on and off, the lights go on and off, the car motor stalls. That's more electromagnetic fluctuation. The people who get in the center, their brain waves are disturbed and they start hallucinating. That's my explanation of these things. I'm not sure it's the right explanation, but it's the one that makes the most sense to me after studying flying saucers for 30 years.
Let's talk about something relative to relativity. The theories that some, even with the super collider they hope to build within the state, to prove concerning time. And I mean, I've heard that if you can get out there far enough, you can capture the light that has been reflected off of our planet from the sun and pick up pictures of Abraham Lincoln delivering the Gettysburg Address. In other words, what can we do to either go forward or backward in time that is scientific? Is that possible?
Well, in general relativity, it's not possible to go back in time, but it is possible that somebody elsewhere in the universe, if they had a strong enough telescope, they could see our past, because it would take somebody a million light years away looking at Earth with a strong enough telescope, they'd see events happening on Earth a million years ago. Mm-hmm. Somebody 100 light years away would see Lincoln, or 120 light years away. But there is a lot of research going on now on what's called the non-local correlation in quantum mechanics, and according to that, if we can create a non-local effect, that will affect the past as well as the present and the future, and nobody's willing to speculate what that might mean. It's like the limerick. There was a young lady named Light whose speed was much faster than light. She departed one day in a relative way and returned on the previous night. If we can send a non-local signal, it might change Abraham Lincoln's mind. It might persuade the assassins not to kill Julius Caesar. We could change all of history. Science is getting closer to science fiction all the time. It's getting harder to write science fiction because science is getting just as weird as science fiction.
Which mystery would you want to solve out of all from mankind's history?
Who picked up the check at the Last Supper? That has always puzzled me. There's nothing in the New Testament to give you the slightest clue.
It wasn't gratis?
I don't think that. They were a bunch
They probably would have used that word back then.
They were a bunch of hippies. I don't think the innkeeper would give them a free meal. Somebody had to get the cash together. We seem to have some dead air.
I know. I was thinking, how can I dampen that so I don't get cards and letters? But we have about a minute and a half here.
I would really like to know what Jesus looked like.
Yeah.
I have a hunch that if the average Christian saw Jesus, they wouldn't want him in the neighborhood.
Or they would.
Probably be too dark-skinned and Semitic looking.
Well. Or they would. We now have a minute. And let me mention in that minute that you can be contacted with whatever will come your way by this phone number, 213-390-2388. Dr. Robert Anton Wilson, thanks for joining us. It's nice to meet you after all these years.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
May the conspiracy continue, whatever that is.
Victory through vegetables.
Yes, on all of that. Thank you for joining us in KTAR. And I'm going to shift it over to our listeners